The house on the corner of Maple and Sycamore Street didn't just sit there, it seemed to hum. It was a rambling, Victorian-style structure painted a shade of butter yellow that had faded over the years into something softer, like the inside of a well-worn vanilla bean. It had a wraparound porch that creaked in the key of C major and a front door that stuck just enough to require a special hip bump to open. This was the Sullivan house. And inside, the Sullivan family was a living, breathing, chaotic orchestra of noise, love, and the smell of roasting garlic. The center of the orchestra stood Arthur and Rose Sullivan, the conductors of this multi-generational symphony. Arthur, with his snowy white beard and eyes that crinkled at the corners like worn paper maps, was currently in the backyard, wrestling with a charcoal grill that was older than most of his grandchildren. Rose, whose laugh could be heard 3 rooms away, was in the kitchen, surrounded by a cloud of flour, orchestrating the chaos of the annual Sullivan Summer Solstice Feast. This wasn't just a dinner. In the Sullivan clan, this was the Super Bowl of eating, talking, and feeling. Part 1: The boy who watched the stars upstairs. In the room with the slanted ceiling that smelled faintly of old books and cedar, 10-year-old Leo sat cross-legged on the floor. Leo was the son of Thomas, the eldest Sullivan brother. While the rest of the family was loud, like a brass band marching through a library, Leo was quiet. He was a woodwind instrument in a house of drums. Leo adjusted the lens of his telescope. It was his most prized possession, a brass and glass tube that turned the blurry night sky into a crisp playground of diamonds. Tonight was special. Tonight, the meteor shower was supposed to be visible, a celestial fireworks display that happened only once a year. But Leo felt a knot in his stomach, tight and hard like a peach pit. Leo? You in there, buddy? The door creaked. It was Thomas. Thomas looked like a bear who had been trying to bake a souffle, large, gentle, but perpetually worried he was going to break something. He wiped his hands on a dish towel tucked into his belt. "Hey, Dad," Leo whispered, not looking away from the window. "Grandma Rose is asking for the official taste tester to come down. She says the spoon for the brownie batter isn't going to lick itself." Usually, this offer would send Leo sprinting down the stairs. Today, he just shrugged. Thomas stepped into the room, navigating through the piles of star charts and model rockets. He sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress dipping under his weight. "Okay, spill it. Is it the math test? Or did Cousin Sammy try to convince you that spiders are actually tiny aliens again?" Leo traced a finger along the cold metal of the telescope. "It's the talent show," he admitted softly. Every year after the solstice feast, the family held a talent show in the living room. It was silly and low stakes, but to Leo it felt like standing on a cliff. "Ah," Thomas said, his voice dropping to a soothing rumble. "What about it?" "Sammy is going to juggle," Leo said, his voice trembling. "Mia is going to play the violin. Even baby Oliver is going to." "Well, he's going to bang on pots, but everyone will clap." "I don't have a talent, Dad. I just look at things." Thomas looked at his son, really looked at him. He saw the way Leo's eyes lit up when he talked about the rings of Saturn, the way he could name every constellation in the northern hemisphere. Leo, Thomas said gently, putting a large, warm hand on Leo's shoulder. Looking at things is a talent. Seeing the world, really seeing it, is something most grown-ups forget how to do. You have the gift of wonder. Wonder isn't a show, Leo muttered. Maybe not yet, Thomas smiled, a secret twinkle in his eye. But the night is young. Come on, let's get some of that batter. It'll help you think. Part 2. The architect of chaos downstairs. The living room had been transformed into a construction zone. This was the domain of Julia, the second eldest Sullivan, and her 7-year-old daughter, Mia. Julia was an architect in the city. She liked straight lines, clear plans, and things that stood up when you put them down. Mia, however, was an agent of entropy. She was currently trying to build a castle out of the sofa cushions, 3 dining chairs, and Grandma Rose's best knitted afghan. Mia, honey, Julia said, holding a stack of napkins she was trying to fold into swans. If you use the dining chairs for the castle, where is Uncle Ben going to sit? Uncle Ben can sit on the floor, Mia declared from inside her fortress. He has good knees. Julia sighed, blowing a stray lock of hair out of her face. She wanted everything to be perfect. She wanted the napkins to be swans, the lighting to be ambient, and the family to function like a well-oiled machine. But the Sullivans were not a machine. They were a garden, wild, overgrown, and beautiful in their messiness. Mom! Mia poked her head out of the blanket fort. She was wearing a colander on her head like a helmet. Come inside. The dragon is coming. I can't, sweetie. I have to set the table. The schedule says appetizers at 5:00 p.m. sharp. But the dragon doesn't care about the schedule, Mia insisted, her eyes wide with urgency. Julia looked at her watch. Then she looked at the table, half set with sparkling silverware. Then she looked at her daughter, whose imagination was building a world far more interesting than a dinner party. Julia dropped the napkins. They fluttered to the floor like white leaves. A dragon, you say? Julia asked, kicking off her sensible heels. A fire-breathing one, Mia confirmed seriously. Well then, Julia said, dropping to her knees and crawling into the fort. We're going to need to reinforce the structural integrity of this roof. Hand me that pillow. Inside the fort, the light was dim and filtered through the knit patterns of the afghan. Smelled of laundry detergent and dust. For the first time all day, Julia's shoulders dropped. She wasn't an architect here, she was a castle defender. And for Mia, having her mom in her world was better than any perfect swan napkin. Part 3. The Song of the Garden. Out in the backyard, the air was thick with the scent of blooming jasmine and charcoal smoke. This was where Ben, the youngest Sullivan brother, held court. Ben was the drifter of the family, a musician, a painter, a man who followed the wind. He had returned home just for the weekend, bringing with him a battered guitar case and a heart full of stories. He was sitting on the swing bench with his father, Arthur. Arthur was watching the burgers sizzle, but his mind seemed elsewhere. He was rubbing his left hand, the knuckles swollen and stiff. "Hands bothering you, Pop?" Ben asked, strumming a soft G chord that hung in the humid air. Arthur grunted, flipping a burger with practiced ease. "Getting old is a privilege, Benny, but it comes with a tax. These fingers don't move like they used to. Can't grip the hammer. Can't grip the fretboard." Arthur had taught Ben to play guitar. He had been a local legend in his day, a man who could make a six-string weep. To see him unable to play was like seeing a bird that had forgotten how to fly. "You know," Ben said, changing the chord to a minor key, "music isn't just in the fingers. It's in the ears. It's in the tapping of the foot." "Bah!" Arthur waved the spatula. "A guitar needs hands." "Maybe," Ben said. He stopped playing and leaned forward. "Or maybe it just needs a partner. Remember that song you wrote for Mom? The Rose of Maple Street?" Arthur softened. "I haven't played that in 10 years." "I remember the chords," Ben said. "But I can't get the rhythm right. I play it too fast. I have city hands. I need country hands to keep the tempo." Ben tapped the body of the guitar. Thump, thump, tap. Thump, thump, tap. "Like that?" Ben asked. Arthur listened. The rhythm was the heartbeat of the song. Without realizing it, Arthur began to tap his spatula against the side of the wooden grill table. Thump, thump, tap. "Slower," Arthur corrected. "You're rushing the bridge. It needs to breathe." "Show me," Ben challenged gently. Arthur put down the spatula. He walked over to the bench. He didn't pick up the guitar. Instead, he sat next to his son. He began to tap his knees, a complex, syncopated rhythm that he had invented 40 years ago. Ben matched his strumming to his father's percussion. The guitar rang out, bright and clear, anchored by the steady, deep rhythm of Arthur's hands. Arthur closed his eyes, swaying slightly. He wasn't playing the notes, but he was making the music. He was the conductor again. "That's it," Arthur whispered, a smile breaking through his white beard. "That's the pocket." Part 4: The Storm and the Feast. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in strokes of violet and tangerine, the dinner bell rang. It was an actual brass bell that Grandma Rose kept by the back door. "Dinner!" Rose's voice carried over the yard. The family converged. Thomas and Leo came down from the attic, Leo's fingers stained with ink from drawing star charts. Julia and Mia emerged from the fort, their hair static charged and messy. Ben and Arthur walked in from the garden, arm in arm. Table was a masterpiece of organized chaos. There was a mountain of mashed potatoes that looked like a volcano with a butter crater. There were green beans from the garden that tasted like sunshine and snap. There was a roast chicken that was so tender it practically fell apart when you looked at it. But just as everyone took their seats, the sky outside changed. The violet turned to a bruised purple. The wind picked up, whipping the curtains through the open windows. A low rumble shook the floorboards. Thunder? Thomas asked, looking up. The forecast said clear skies. The forecast doesn't live in Maplewood, Arthur said, grabbing the platter of corn on the cob just as a gust of wind threatened to blow the napkins away. Crack boom. The heavens opened up. It wasn't a drizzle, it was a deluge. Rain hammered against the roof like 1,000 drumsticks. And then the lights flickered. Once. Twice. And died. The dining room was plunged into darkness. For a second there was silence. Then the sound of Mia gasping. "It's the dragon!" "Me!" squeaked. "Stay calm, everyone," Thomas's voice boomed, the responsible big brother taking charge. "I have flashlights in the pantry." "I have candles," Rose announced. Arthur grabbed the matches from the drawer. In the darkness, there was the sound of shuffling, a few bumped knees and giggles. A match flared to life, illuminating Arthur's face. He lit a tall taper candle, then another. Slowly, the room filled with a warm, flickering golden glow. The storm raged outside, lashing against the glass, but inside, the candlelight made everything feel smaller, closer, and more magical. The shadows danced on the walls. The faces of the family, young and old, were bathed in soft amber light. "Wow," Rose said, looking at her family huddled around the table. "The oven is off, but the food is hot. Let's eat." There is something about eating by candlelight during a storm that changes the taste of food. Potatoes seemed creamier. Conversation was quieter, more intimate. Without the distraction of phones or the TV in the background, they leaned in. They told stories. Thomas talked about the bakery and a wedding cake that had almost tipped over. Julia talked about the castle she had built with Mia. Arthur told the story of the first time he met Rose during a storm just like this one, when he offered her his umbrella and got soaked himself. Leo sat quietly, listening. He looked at the faces of his family. In the candlelight, they didn't look like just people. They looked like planets orbiting the sun of the dinner table. He realized something then. He realized that gravity wasn't just a force in space. It was love. It was the thing that pulled them all together, no matter how far they drifted. Part 5, the talent show. After dinner, the storm was still grumbling, but the rain had softened to a steady rhythm. The show must go on, Ben declared, strumming his guitar in the candlelight. They pushed the table back. The living room became the stage. Mia went first. She performed an interpretive dance called The Storm, which involved a lot of spinning and falling onto the couch cushions. The family clapped and cheered as if she were a prima ballerina. Then came Ben and Arthur. Arthur sat on a stool, tapping out the rhythm on the body of the guitar while Ben played The Rose of Maple Street. It was a bluesy, soulful rendition. When they finished, Rose wiped a tear from her eye, and the applause was loud enough to drown out the thunder. Then it was Leo's turn. Leo stood up. His heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He walked to the center of the room. He didn't have a juggling ball. He didn't have a violin. He held his telescope in one hand and a flashlight in the other. I can't show you the stars tonight, Leo said, his voice small. The clouds are blocking them. The room was silent. Thomas leaned forward, giving his son an encouraging nod. But, Leo continued, his voice gaining a little strength, I can tell you about them. 'Cause even when we can't see them, they are still there. Leo clicked on the flashlight. He pointed it at the ceiling. Imagine, Leo said, moving the beam of light across the plaster. That right here is Polaris, the North Star. It's the anchor. It never moves. It's like Grandpa. Arthur chuckled, touching his chest. And over here, Leo moved the light to the left, is the Great Bear Ursa Major. It's big and strong and protects the smaller stars. That's Dad. Thomas smiled, his eyes shining. And here, Leo spun the light in a jagged, energetic pattern, is Cassiopeia. Queen. She's beautiful and a little bit dramatic. That's definitely Aunt Julia, Ben whispered, earning a playful shove from his sister. Leo continued, weaving a story of the sky, mapping his family onto the constellations. He spoke of binary stars that danced around each other, Ben and his music, of comets that blazed bright and wild, Mia, and of the steady, warm glow of the moon that watched over it all, Grandma Rose. He didn't just list facts. He painted with words. He described the cold silence of space and the warmth of the stars. He made them feel how small they were, but also how important they were, because they were the ones looking up. When Leo clicked the flashlight off, the room was pitch black for a moment before the candlelight reasserted itself. There was a beat of silence. Then the room erupted. It wasn't polite applause. It was cheering. Thomas jumped up and scooped Leo into a bear hug that lifted his feet off the floor. That was magic, Leo, Mia shouted. Better than the dragon, Leo smiled. A real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. He hadn't performed a trick. He had just shared what he loved. And they had loved it back. Part 6. The clearing. As the evening wound down, the rain stopped. Clouds, heavy and exhausted, began to break apart. Look! Ben called out from the window. The family rushed to the back porch. The storm had scrubbed the air clean. The sky was a deep, velvety black. And there, through a break in the clouds, the Perseid meteor shower had begun. Streaks of light slashed across the darkness, silent, fleeting, and breathtaking. Ooh, whispered Mia. Ah, sighed Rose. Arthur put his arm around Rose. Thomas stood with his hand on Leo's shoulder. Julia held Mia close. Ben leaned against the doorframe, strumming a silent chord. They stood there for a long time, 3 generations of Sullivans, watching the universe put on a show just for them. Leo looked through his telescope, but then he pulled his eye away. He didn't need the lens right now. He wanted to see the whole picture. He wanted to see the stars above and the family beside him. Thomas leaned down. You were right, Leo, he whispered. Wonder is a talent. And you're the best at it. Leo leaned into his father's side. The anxiety was gone, replaced by a warmth that felt like hot cocoa on a cold day. Conclusion. Eventually, the eyelids grew heavy. The Sullivan summer solstice feast was coming to an end. Uncle Ben packed his guitar, promising to teach Arthur a new rhythm next time. Aunt Julia carried a sleeping Mia to the car, the architect carrying her chaos with infinite tenderness. Thomas tucked Leo into bed. The room was dark, lit only by the glow in the dark stars stuck to the ceiling, a poor imitation of the real thing but beautiful in their own way. Good night, my stargazer, Thomas said, kissing Leo's forehead. Good night, Dad, Leo murmured, his eyes already closing. Downstairs, Arthur and Rose blew out the last of the candles. The house settled. The floorboards creaked as the old house relaxed, happy to have held so much life within its walls for another day. The moral of the story, if you were to ask the Sullivans, wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about baking the perfect cake or building the perfect fort or playing the perfect song. It was about the storm. It was about how, when the lights go out and the rain pours down, you find the people who have the matches. You find the people who will sit in the dark with you and tell stories until the light comes back. And sometimes, if you are very lucky and very quiet, you realize that the light was there all along, shining in the faces of the people you love. The Sullivan house slept, bathed in moonlight, ready to do it all again tomorrow. The end.